Hello again. We're going to take a look at frame labels now. They're used to give keyframes names instead of relying on numbers or simply playing as we are at the moment. So if we look in our menu at the actions, you can see that at the moment when we click the Start Game button, all we do is play, which works. If we test the game, it does work, but that's purely because the game is on the frame immediately after the menu. If I, for example, move the game to frame 10 and test it, you can see that we go straight to the game over screen, which is definitely not what we want to do. We could use the frame number here, so we know that the game's now on frame 10. Instead of playing, we could put go to and play and put the number 10. That would work. But now when we die, we totally bypass the game over screen because that's not in the right order again. Plus, with labelling numbers, if I now move that keyframe again, put it back to where it was, it's totally broken now. We go straight back to the menu screen. And that's because we're relying on knowing exactly where this keyframe is going to be, which isn't always the best idea, and it makes it hard to reshuffle your timeline. Especially later on, if you're making a project with loads of frames, you might be doing an epic adventure where you've got 100 different scenes and everyone's got different objects and stuff. So your best bet is to use things called frame labels. And to do that, you click on a keyframe and go to the Properties tab and you can name the frame. So I'm going to call this one Menu. Go to my next frame, this is the game, so I'm going to call it Game. And finally we've got the Game Over screen, which we'll call Game Over. While we're at it, we'll put a placeholder for the instruction screen as well. But one thing to note there is that this keyframe's gained a flag. That shows that it has a frame label. You can't see it on the others because the A takes precedent. Because those keyframes have ActionScript, you can't see the flags. If I move them a little bit, you'll be able to see the flag on the menu there, so we can tell that it's working. Just going to quickly throw in a blank keyframe, stick a new text field in here, put instructions, and I'll have that for later use, just so we've got a keyframe really. Make it a bit bigger, make sure it's the project font, make it full width and center it, I guess. Don't need it as dynamic. Okay, so there's our instructions placeholder page. If we label that, you can see that the keyframe gets a red flag instantly because there's no ActionScript on that keyframe to overwrite the flag or to just oust the position of it. So what we can now do, if we go back to the script for the menu, instead of putting go to and play 10, we can use the frame label. So we'll type game, save it and test it, goes straight to the game, that's good. The benefit of that is that now if we decide we don't like the structure of our timeline, we can move the game frame. I can put it over here on frame 25, test it, press start game, and we still go to the game. And that's just what we wanted to do. We can move it, it really doesn't matter where they are. As long as they're labelled, we'll be able to find them. That's the benefit of frame labels. Just going to put everything back to where it should be, get rid of these extra frames. And we're going to look at using the code behind these frame labels. So if we hop into the actions again, there's a chance that you will make use of a frame label that doesn't exist. So for example, if I type something that I know isn't an existing frame label and test the game, I press the start button and we get an error. Scroll, there we go. So the frame label does not exist, so it doesn't know what to do. There's a few ways we can handle that. We could use what's called catching an event, or an error, sorry. We can try for an error, try a bit of code and catch an error. And I'll show you quickly how to do that. It's quite useful for general debugging. Also, if you've got an error you can never find, you can sort of ignore it in this way. If it doesn't affect your game, you can make a try catch to ignore it. So before this go to and play statement, I'm going to open a try statement. I'm use the keyword try and open brackets. Everything within the next set of brackets is going to be attempted consciously by Flash. So if I close that there and put catch and explain what we're looking to catch, in this case it'll be an error, so I'll just go E error. And this is what we do here. So if we reach this bit, there has been an error. And we could just trace something out there. We could just trace, whoops. There are wider uses for that. If you, I don't know, say you're loading in pictures and you don't find a picture but you pick up an error, you might want to put a message to the user saying that the picture doesn't exist, or restart the whole program or something like that, instead of just tracing an error like we're doing. You can see that we trace whoops every time we catch that error. So it's slightly tidier than having a massive error warning. We could trace the actual error itself. I think it's E dot to string. Try that. And there we go. So we get the error that would have been reported anyway. We could also have a fallback there. Instead of tracing something out, we could just play. So if the frame label's wrong, we're just going to play the main timeline. And we can see now that we still get to the game. So that's a slightly more useful failsafe. I'm not actually going to use these try catches. I just wanted to somehow get them into a video to show you what you can do if you have a chunk of code that might have an error. You can wrap it all in a try catch and see what's going on. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to do it a different way. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to make a variable here. Let's say var frame label FL, F capital L. If you do FL, it'll go blue, and that's because that's a library. So we could even go F label, call it frame label. That'll go blue as well, I think. Oh, maybe not. Let's use frame label equals, and we'll put game. And we're going to make use of the property, the current labels property of the movie clip that we're in. So movie clips hold an array of frame labels that we can check through. And we're going to do that now. So we'll say for var I equals 0. I is less than current labels dot length I plus plus. So we're going to loop through all the frame labels that this movie clip has. We'll comment that in. So we're going to loop through them all. We'll check to see if the current, well, the desired frame matches the current one in the list. So a better idea might be to have desired label there. Desired label. So we'll say if current labels, open your square brackets, I dot, and we want the name of that frame label. Because this is an array of frame labels, it's not just an array of strings. A frame label is actually an object, it contains more information than just the string. So we're accessing the frame label object and asking specifically for its name. So if current labels I.name equals desired label, let's trace something. Trace. Found the right one, and we'll go to it. So we'll go to and play desired label. Okay, and if we return there, if we end the function here, end the function here, that means if we do find the right frame, we'll return and stop running code. So we can assume that if we reach the end of the for loop, we haven't found the label. So if we get here, the desired label didn't exist. So we can trace something out there. The frame you wanted doesn't exist. Save it, test it. So this one should work because we've put game, and it does, and it's traced out, found the right one. If we now change desired label to something wrong, play it again, we should trace, yeah. So we've got the frame you wanted doesn't exist. So it's slightly safer than just assuming we can jump to any old label. We're actually checking them. And what I'm going to do is make a function of this. So I'm going to cut everything there. Go to the document class, so game.as. Make a private function, and we'll call it goToLabel. Going to take a string, so we'll have, we'll call it desired label since we've already used it. The code's already set up to use it rather. Indent all this, get an email while we're at it. That looks okay. So we just need to make use of that function. Save your document class, go back to your timeline, get to the relevant frame and get into the actions. And we want to, instead of making a variable for desired label, we just want to call that function we've made. So if we go to label, save it, test it, start game, we get the error, the trace out. So let's change this so it works. Save it, test it. And that works. So what we can do now, we can make use of that function anywhere we've chosen to play. So I'm going to copy it, go to my game screen. Actually, I think we do this in the document class. If we jump back to the document class, we can see here in the doGameOver function, instead of playing the main timeline, we can paste that in and we want to go to game over. Go to the game over screen, save the document class and test it. So now when we die, it should say found the right one. Yeah, and we go to the game over screen. That's working. Our game over screen is still lacking a button, so let's do that. Game over screen, lift these bits up a touch. Just going to copy the text, I think. Holding the Alt button. Actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to duplicate a button I've already used. So I'm going to right click on my Start Game button, duplicate it, rename it to BTN Restart. Press OK. Drag it in and just edit it so that it doesn't say Start Game anymore. Position it. Let's edit that so that should say Restart. Or back to menu is probably a better idea. Copy that, make sure it's in everyone. Got the wrong font colour now. It's going well, it's going well. Change that to the golden colour we had, was it that one? And the hitbox is fine. Just to make sure I'm using consistent names, I'll check what we called the start button. BTN Start Game. So we'll call this BTN Back. I'm going to copy the code from the other button. So just copy these. And paste it into the game over screen. So So instead of having a click listener for the start button, it'll be the restart button. btn back, add event listener. Instead of start game, we'll have return to menu. Make the function. This should really go in the document class. So I'm going to cut that. I'm going to delete it from the menu frame. So delete it from there. Get to the document class. Paste it twice at the bottom. Once for the main menu and once for game over. Tab it in. Make them private. Sorry, this is dragging on a bit, but it needs doing. So we've got the start game, which works fine, and we've got the other one, which should be back to menu, did I say? And that needs to go back to menu. Oops. Return to menu. Back to menu. Whew. Check it works. Make sure we can die. We get to the game over screen, we can click it and we go back. Woohoo! There's something I didn't like there. What was it? I think... yeah, I don't like these traces, so I'm going to get rid of it. I'll keep the one that's an error because that's useful, but I don't want to know that I've gone to the right frame. I want to assume that we're doing it right. Just have it warn us when it goes wrong. So I think we'll leave this video at that. In the next one, we'll set it up so that content from different menus, different screens, tweens in and out, and that might take a bit of fiddling. So we'll keep this one as short as I can now, 17 minutes or so, and I'll record the other one straight away, so it should be up shortly after this one. See you soon.